I'm 65 now, and my hands shake when I peel potatoes. My daughter says it's age, but I know better. These hands have buried secrets no one's supposed to know. Secrets that began the day I found out my husband was in love with someone else, and ended the day his mother changed her will. If you think revenge always looks like fire and fury, you've never met a woman who learned to burn quietly. Hello, beloved listeners. Thank you for joining me today on Confessions by Lady Vee. If stories about love, betrayal, and quiet strength move you, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, so you never miss a new confession. I'm always curious to know which corners of the world you're listening from. Share your city in the comments below. Now settle in, take a deep breath, and listen closely. Because this is the story of a woman who didn't just survive her husband's betrayal, she outlived it. It was 1997 when I found out about Linda. April, I think. No, May. Early May, because the lilacs were blooming and their smell was so heavy it almost made me sick. I remember standing in our kitchen, holding a credit card statement I'd found in Michael's jacket pocket, and smelling those lilacs through the open window. The statement showed charges from a hotel in Portsmouth. We'd never been to Portsmouth together. We talked about it once, years before, but Michael said it was too touristy, too expensive for what you got. The smell of those lilacs. I can't be near them anymore without my stomach turning. I was 42. We'd been married 20 years. We had 2 children, Sarah, who was 16 and studying for her driver's test, and Tommy, who was 13 and in that phase where he grunted instead of speaking. Michael worked for an insurance company. I worked part-time at the library, shelving books and helping people find things. It was a quiet life. The kind you don't question, because questioning it feels like asking why the sun comes up. I didn't confront him right away. That's what they tell you to do in magazines, isn't it? Confront him, have the conversation, fight for your marriage. But I couldn't. Instead, I watched. I became someone I didn't recognize. Checking pockets, listening to phone calls, noting when he came home late and what excuses he gave. The meatloaf I made on Tuesdays started burning because I'd stand at the window watching for his car instead of watching the oven. Sarah asked if I was feeling okay. I told her I was just tired. I found out her name by accident. Michael left his day planner open on the counter one morning. He'd rushed out to a meeting and forgot it. There it was, written in his careful handwriting, Linda, 7 p.m. Mario's. Mario's was an Italian place 2 towns over. We used to go there for anniversaries, before the kids, before life got busy. I remember running my finger over her name like it was Braille, like I could understand everything just by touching those 5 letters. The next Tuesday, I told Michael I had book club. I didn't. I drove to Mario's and sat in my car in the parking lot for 40 minutes. When they came out together, I saw her clearly under the restaurant lights. She was younger than me, maybe 35. With blonde hair she wore in a high ponytail. She was laughing at something Michael said, touching his arm. He was wearing the blue shirt I'd ironed for him that morning. I'd burned my thumb on the iron. The blister was still there, white and tender, as I gripped the steering wheel and watched my husband kiss another woman beside her car. I drove home very carefully that night. I remember thinking I shouldn't be driving because I couldn't feel my hands or feet, like my body had disconnected from itself. I made it home though. I put the car in the garage, walked into the house, and started a load of laundry. Michael came home an hour later. He said he'd been at the office late. I nodded. I folded his underwear and didn't say a word. You'd think that would be when I decided. But it wasn't. For weeks, I did nothing. I got up, made breakfast, went to work, came home, made dinner. The kids finished the school year. Summer came. We took a vacation to Cape Cod, Michael's idea. He said we needed family time. I have photographs from that trip, all of us on the beach, the kids buried in sand up to their necks, Michael with his arm around me. I'm smiling in those pictures. I remember being surprised by that when I developed them. I didn't remember smiling. It was on that trip, actually, sitting on the beach at sunset while Michael played frisbee with Tommy, that something settled in me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder. I watched the tide coming in, watched it erase the kids' footprints like they'd never been there, and I thought, I'm being erased. Not all at once. Gradually. The way the ocean does it, patient, persistent, until there's nothing left but smooth sand. That's when I decided I wouldn't be erased. I didn't want to leave him. People don't understand that part. They think revenge means walking away, getting your own apartment, starting over with your head held high. But I was 42 years old. I'd spent my entire adult life building this family, this home. I'd chosen wallpaper and planted gardens and memorized everyone's favorite meals. Leaving meant giving all that to Linda, letting her step into the life I'd made. That felt like losing twice. So I stayed. But I changed the terms. It started small. I stopped ironing his shirts. He didn't notice at first, just grabbed them wrinkled from the closet and went to work. When he finally mentioned it, "Han, these shirts are a mess," I said the iron was broken. I never fixed it. Let Linda iron his shirts, I thought. Let her burn her thumb. I stopped cooking his favorite meals. Michael loved pot roast, the way my mother taught me to make it with carrots and potatoes and that wine gravy that took all afternoon. I made it every Sunday for 20 years. I stopped. I made chicken instead, or pasta, or sometimes I just said I wasn't hungry and left him to figure out dinner himself. When he asked about the pot roast, I said I was trying new recipes. I never made it again. These sound like small things. They were. That was the point. I was turning down the volume on our marriage so gradually he barely noticed. But I noticed. Every small thing I stopped doing felt like taking back a piece of myself. The affair continued. I could tell. He'd come home smelling different. Not like perfume, he was careful about that, but like a different air, a different life. I didn't confront him. I just watched and waited and planned. I started keeping my own bank account. Just a small one at first, putting aside $20 here, $30 there from my library paycheck. Michael never asked about money. I'd always handled the household accounts. Over months, I saved quietly. I was careful. I didn't know what I was saving for exactly, but I knew I needed something that was mine. In September, Sarah went to college. She chose a school in Vermont, far enough away that she'd need to live on campus. I helped her pack, drove her up with Michael, arranged her dorm room. When we left her there, I cried the whole drive home. Michael thought I was crying because our daughter was leaving. I was crying because I'd lost my ally. The house would be quieter now. Harder to hide in. That's when things got worse between Michael and Linda. I could tell because he started picking fights with me about nothing. The way I loaded the dishwasher, the shows I watched on television, the fact that I'd joined a gardening club. He was restless, unhappy, looking for a reason to justify what he was doing. I gave him nothing. I was calm, agreeable, boring. It drove him crazy. In November, I found out Linda worked at his office. She was a claims adjuster, 3 floors down from him. I learned this from Barbara, another library volunteer, whose husband worked at the same company. Barbara mentioned it innocently. "Oh, your Michael works with my husband." Such a coincidence. And there's a lovely young woman there, Linda something, who helped us with our flood damage claim. Do you know her? I said I didn't. But now I knew where she worked, what she did, what her last name was. Barbara had shown me the paperwork. Linda Garrett. I knew what she looked like. I could have done anything with that information. But I didn't. Not yet. Christmas that year was strange. Sarah came home from college with a new haircut and a confidence I didn't recognize. Tommy was 14 now, more boy than child, starting to notice that things at home weren't quite right. We opened presents. We ate ham and scalloped potatoes. Michael gave me a necklace, silver with a small opal. It was pretty. I wore it once to church, then put it in my jewelry box and never touched it again. On New Year's Eve, Michael said he had to work late. He didn't. He spent it with Linda, I'm sure. I spent it with Tommy, watching the ball drop on television, drinking one glass of champagne that tasted like sorrow. When the clock struck midnight, Tommy hugged me and said, "New year, new start, Mom." I held him and thought yes. Yes, it will be. That's when I decided what I was going to do. I want to be clear about something. What I did wasn't illegal. It wasn't violence. It wasn't even, technically, revenge in the way you might think. It was just rearranging things. Telling the truth, actually. Just not the way Michael would have wanted it told. Michael's mother, Helen, lived in a nursing home about an hour away. She was 83, had dementia, didn't always know where she was or who we were. We visited every other Sunday, me, Michael, and sometimes Tommy if we could drag him along. Helen had money. Not a fortune, but enough. A house she'd owned outright, stocks her husband had left her, some savings. Michael was her only child. He stood to inherit everything. In February, I started visiting Helen alone. I'd tell Michael I was going to the library or to my gardening club, and I'd drive to the nursing home instead. I'd sit with Helen, hold her hand, brush her hair. Some days she knew me. Some days she called me by her sister's name. It didn't matter. I was patient. I brought her banana bread. She loved banana bread, and magazines with pictures of gardens. Over months, I became a fixture there. The nurses knew me. They'd wave when I came in, tell me how Helen was doing, thank me for being such a devoted daughter-in-law. I'd sit in the common room with Helen, or in her room, and we'd look at photo albums together. I labeled every picture for her, reminded her who everyone was. I was kind. I was constant. I was there. Michael, meanwhile, visited less and less. He'd make excuses. Work was busy, he had a cold, he'd go next week. I never pushed. I just kept going, kept being present, kept being the good daughter-in-law. In May, exactly a year after I'd found that credit card statement, I told Helen the truth. She was having a good day, clear-eyed and present. We were in her room, looking at pictures of Michael as a boy. I said, very gently, Helen, I need to tell you something. Michael is seeing another woman. He's been unfaithful to me for over a year. She looked at me. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, that's his father in him. Robert did the same to me twice. I hadn't known that. I held her hand and said, I'm so sorry, Helen. She patted my hand. You're a good woman. Better than he deserves. A few weeks later, Helen updated her will. She worked with a lawyer the nursing home recommended. I had nothing to do with the actual paperwork, didn't influence anything directly. But when she died that August, peacefully in her sleep, the will left most of her estate to her grandson, Tommy, in a trust he'd receive when he turned 21. She left a smaller amount to Sarah for college. To Michael, she left her car and a note that said, I hope you find what you're looking for. She left me her house. I didn't contest it. Neither did the kids. They had their own inheritances. But Michael was furious. Not at his mother, who was dead. At me. He accused me of manipulating her, of poisoning her against him. I said nothing. I just showed him the records from the nursing home, all those visits, all those hours, all that time I'd spent while he was busy elsewhere. He couldn't argue with evidence. Linda broke up with him around that time. I found out later, years later, that she'd been dating Michael thinking he was separated, on the verge of divorce. When she realized he was still very much married, still coming home to me every night, she ended it. She wasn't interested in being the other woman forever. She wanted someone who chose her. Michael didn't tell me about the breakup. I just noticed him being home more, being quieter. He'd sit in his chair in the evening and stare at the television without really watching. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me like he was trying to figure something out. I'd smile and ask if he wanted more coffee. In September, I told Michael I wanted a divorce. He was shocked. After everything, he was shocked. He said, why? Why now? I could have said 1,000 things. I could have screamed and cried and listed every betrayal, every lie, every moment I'd felt invisible. Instead, I said, I'm not happy. I haven't been for a long time. He tried to fight it at first, said we could go to counseling, work things out. But I was done. 23 years of marriage, and I was done. We divided things quietly. He got the house we'd lived in. I didn't want it anymore, it had too many ghosts. I got Helen's house and the savings I'd been building. The kids were adults now, making their own lives. They were sad but not surprised. Sarah told me later she'd known something was wrong for years. I moved into Helen's house in October. It was a small Cape Cod-style place with a big backyard and old radiators that clanked when they warmed up. I painted the walls yellow. I planted a vegetable garden. I got a cat from the shelter, a tabby I named George. I started working full-time at the library. I didn't date. I didn't want to. I wanted quiet. I wanted to remember who I was before Michael, before the kids, before I learned to make myself smaller to fit into someone else's life. Michael remarried 3 years later. Not Linda, someone new, younger. I saw the announcement in the paper. I felt nothing. Maybe that's the worst kind of revenge, really, not caring anymore. Sarah had 2 children of her own now. Tommy became a teacher. They visit me on weekends sometimes, bring the grandchildren. We make cookies, work in the garden, read books. The kids ask me about their grandfather, and I tell them true things. He worked hard, he loved them, he was complicated. I don't tell them the rest. That's not their burden. I'm 65 now, like I said at the start. My hands shake, but they still work. They can still hold things, let go of things. I think that's what I learned through all of this, knowing when to hold on and when to let go. I held on to my anger long enough to protect myself, to secure a future for me and my children. Then I let it go because carrying it was costing me more than keeping it was worth. People ask if I regret any of it. I don't know how to answer that. Do I regret marrying Michael? No. I got 2 beautiful children from that marriage, got years of happiness before everything broke. Do I regret what I did with Helen, the way I arranged things? I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret doing it. Here's what I know now: revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't make you whole again. It just creates a space where healing can start. It gives you room to breathe, to rebuild, to remember your own worth. That's all I wanted: space and breath and worth. The lilacs bloom every May. For years, I avoided them, couldn't stand their smell. But last spring, I planted some in my backyard. They're growing slowly, getting stronger. This year, when they bloomed, I cut some and brought them inside. I put them in a vase on my kitchen table and sat with them until their smell became just a smell again, sweet and heavy and temporary. Everything is temporary. The hurt, the anger, the need to even the score. What lasts is what you build after. The life you make when you stop reacting to what was done to you and start choosing what comes next. I chose a yellow house and a tabby cat and a garden that grows what I plant in it. I chose forgiveness, eventually, not for Michael but for myself. For the years I stayed silent, for the ways I made myself small, for thinking love meant disappearing. I'm 65. My hands shake. But they're my hands. They've held what needed holding and let go of what needed leaving. They've done enough. They're enough. I'm enough. That's what I'd tell my younger self, if I could. That's what I'd tell anyone: you're enough. Even when you're told you're not, even when you feel invisible, even when someone treats your love like it's disposable, you're enough. The rest is just details. Details fade. Truth remains. I'm still here. That's my revenge. That's my victory. That's my peace. I tell you this not so you'll admire me or judge me or even understand me. I tell you this because you might need to hear it. Someone might have made you feel small. Someone might have taken your devotion and treated it like it was worthless. You might be standing in your kitchen right now, holding evidence of a betrayal, smelling something sweet that will never smell sweet again. If that's you, hear this: you get to choose what comes next. Not immediately, maybe not for months or years. But eventually, you get to choose. You can disappear, or you can insist on being seen. You can let them write the story, or you can write your own ending. Make it a good one. Make it true. Make it yours. The lilacs will bloom again. You'll be ready when they do.